Good evening. This is The Late Shift. I'm Seth. I'm joined tonight by a financial advisor. Her name is Chantelle Conley, and she works for a company with a really fun name, Modern Woodman. And I'm going to let her explain all that to you. They've been around for a really long time. But first, welcome to the show, Chantelle. You're on the screen.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Super honored to be here. Do you want me to tell you about Modern Woodman and who we are?
Let's do it. I want to hear. Well, I really want to hear a little bit about how you got into this,
Yeah,
and why you're in financial advising at all. But then definitely let's talk a little bit about Modern Woodman and what that is, because it
yeah, for
seems a little
sure.
misleading for this conversation at least.
Well, I'll keep it pretty brief as to why I got into this and how I got into it, because that can become a very long story. I definitely
Sometimes.
talk a lot. But I got into this because I wanted to help people. I come from a background that's a little bit different. I have a twin sister and a couple family members in California, but we grew up in California, and we
Where
grew up,
about?
in Newport Beach, Orange County.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But we grew up in a really different kind of area. We grew up in basically like the Highland Park of Newport Beach. And so we started there. Family did really well financially. And then our family kind of, the dynamic changed and we lost a lot of money and it shaped the way that we did things. So we went from being a household that made $1 million a year to a household that coupon clipped. And so it changed the way
Wow.
that we saw finances as a family. And it changed the way that I saw finances from a young age. And then when I went to college, I thought that money was like the goal, and we got to make a lot of money, and we got to get a job that pays you a lot. And so went to SMU, thought I was going to do that, and then definitely had a change in plans. I ended up getting invited to church when I was in college, and it just changed my life. And I ended up really caring about people. And so when
Yeah.
I graduated, I kind of ended up marrying those things and decided that I wanted to do something that would impact people's lives, but would also do something that would impact the way that they saw their finances. So that's kind of why I got into it, how I got into it. Yeah,
Well, man, are we happy to talk to you? That's exactly what we're looking for. Nice people that want to help us with our finances, because I know there's an awful lot of people out there that need exactly that right now. So let's just you want to just jump into this here.
yeah.
The first thing I wanted to ask you, I think right out of the bat, is you may or may not heard, but about 16.5 million people are unemployed now, and they're waiting on a stimulus check, which maybe is going to get shipped out here soon, we hope. Some people have already started receiving unemployment, but the federal add-on of $600 has not hit anybody as far as we can tell yet. Hopefully that should start as early as next week here in Texas. And I expect that these numbers are going to grow. I mean, we've been adding like 6.5 million people a week right now to unemployment. So at some point we may get close to where we were in the Great Depression at like 24.9% in 1933, which is horrifying. But hopefully it starts slowing down a little bit. Hopefully some of these things start hitting. But I wanna right off the bat just ask, if you just lost your job, and you probably did, if you're watching this, what do you do first? How do you even begin to, without the cash flow, start figuring out how to make this actually work, so you don't end up getting evicted or become homeless, or all sorts of horrible things that could happen in this case. What's the first step?
Yeah, definitely. So my hope would be that you had savings in the first place, and if you did, of course, utilize that money. We want to use your liquid savings first. There was a question when you had sent this to me originally that asked about credit cards specifically.
Yeah.
Now, credit cards are an opportunity for you to finance yourself during this period, but it's not a debt that we would recommend. So I'm not recommending that anyone get into credit card debt. It is a bad debt. So there's good and bad debt. Credit card debt is a bad debt, but it isn't, if it's a necessary product, or not product, but option for you, then you can utilize a credit card during this
Mhm.
season if you have to. If you do, I would say first and foremost, you need to create a budget so that you're not just going crazy on the credit card. If you do have to use it, only use it for your utilities and your mortgage. But the hope would be that you do get some help financially, that you do get some opportunity to use liquid funds and not
Mhm.
debt. Now, we do know that some people haven't built a budget yet, and so that would be where we'd say start there first. Make sure that you're
Okay.
taking all of the things on your kind of your your typical expenses, look at them, itemize them, make sure that you're not having subscriptions come out right now, make sure that you're not having unnecessary payments come out, make sure you're just paying for essentials so that you don't get underwater and you're able to keep yourself afloat. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so this is a good time to start stealing Netflix instead of paying for Netflix.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Borrowing Netflix. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we've got, the first thing we need to do is actually sort of see what's happening, right? And so you went from a place of having a job. Maybe some people had a little bit of a budget. People had sort of an expectation of maybe I know I'm going to make somewhere around this number every month or every week. And then I know that my rent is this much and I know my bills are usually this much. But is that, when you're looking at this right now, is it just as straightforward as, filling out everything that you're paying for and trying to get rid of all of the stuff that's unnecessary right now, right? I mean, that's the first step that you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the ways that we put it is you want to basically pay your mug or your rug. So mug meaning mortgage, utilities, groceries, rug, rent, utilities, groceries. Those are essential items that you have to pay for. So make sure those are a priority. And then you're going to find that you're spending money on tons of optional items, whether that be the Netflix, the Spotify, the coffee subscription, or it could even, and you might not like this, but maybe your car is too expensive and you've got a really large car payment that you need to evaluate. Maybe you're paying for cable and you don't need to have cable. Maybe your cell phone is too expensive in the season and you need to look at getting a burner phone. So I know it's not a popular idea, but really we're trying to keep it mug and rug. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, rent, utilities, groceries, and then anything else outside of that, if it's not affordable in the season, it's not necessary.
Yeah, I mean that's the tough truth, but that makes perfect sense. I mean, there's a fly on the microphone. I apologize. You probably anyway. It's too early for flies. We're dealing with too many bugs already. People need to go back outside and start killing the bugs again. Anyway, so we're talking about mugs and rugs here, and I think that's a good point. You've got a whole list of things in the modern age that you're probably paying for. I mean, how many freaking subscription services are there right now? You've got Disney Plus and Hulu and Netflix and Spotify, and we have a Spotify account. I don't know, probably pry that one from my cold dead hands, but I've been thinking about it, right? And this really has sort of turned into a world where there are a lot of subscription services that everybody's paying for. And maybe people haven't really started looking at that yet. But I mean, just sort of thinking about it off the top of my head, there's probably $50-$60 a month for a lot of people sitting right there. Is there something else that we should be doing after we kind of calculate this? I mean, what if you're insolvent, or is there something that you can add on to this here? Because I think a lot of people are super terrified because honestly, a lot of people in this business were making a fair amount of money, and now they've come crashing back down into a situation, and I think that the biggest expense for many people is just going to be rent, right?
Yeah. Now, it might not be popular as well, but if it looks like you're having to change your living situation, I know that some people are living alone, and maybe getting a roommate would help you with that cost, or maybe moving in with a family member that's willing to let you kind of hang out there for a little bit. Of course, maybe do something for them, mow the lawn, whatever it is. But finding a way to reduce that expense is definitely important. Look at other options for rent. Maybe you're living in an apartment that's a little bit too expensive and you might need to look in an area that it's lower rent. So those are some of the things that I would say to look at if that's the one thing that you've got to cut down on. It is hard because you got to have somewhere to live. You need a roof over your head, but it's not like it's not an option to go to a friend and talk to them about it. So I would say this might be a situation where you have to become a little bit humble, swallow your pride, and ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It would hurt more for you to get into a financial hole in this season than for you to just get out of the hole and stay with a friend to get through the season. It's not forever. I don't think this is going to be forever. It's just going to be for a season. So see it from that perspective. Don't see it for a forever season, but go ask for help. Don't try and do it alone. You don't have to do it alone.
That makes sense. I think that's pretty good advice. And to be honest, there's probably going to be a lot of real estate emptying out. I don't think a lot of people are looking right now for new living situations. And so people may be surprised what's available out there. I know, at least in our industry, people tend to stick together. And since we're all sheltering in place anyway, it might not be a bad idea to have a friend. Maybe they have a Netflix account, right? I
Yeah.
mean, actually, it doesn't sound too bad, you know. But it is funny to be quarantined by yourself right now is probably a disadvantage in a lot of different ways, I would think. So yeah, that's a good point. So we've got aid checks hopefully coming in here soon. It's looking like most people that we're talking to here are going to be looking at somewhere around $1,200. If you're making less than $99,000 a year, you're going to make something this year off of this, and hopefully that's going to arrive in the next couple of weeks. Would the plan be just to take that money, apply that immediately toward what we're talking about, the mug and the rug here,
Yeah.
and okay,
You
and really
basically
just
answered the
taking
question.
that
That
and
would be where we'd say we want you to put the money for sure. And obviously, if there's something that's categorize your bills, find out what you really, really have to pay for right then and there. This is a case by case situation. Maybe you have another situation where you're gonna maybe you might lose your car in the event of not paying for it, something like that. Like if there is a case by case situation where you've got something that's a little bit more urgent, then maybe evaluate that. But we would say mug or rug, mortgage and rent, utilities, gas, and groceries. So looking at those things would be probably the priority in the situation.
And do you think it's a good strategy to try to defer some of these payments, or is that something that you've come across yet in your journeys post COVID that has been successful for people?
Yeah, so I haven't come across it yet as far as deferring payments. Now, it is something that you could consider. And there are some companies that are being fairly lenient in working with you. And that, again, is a case by case situation. Some companies aren't willing to work with people. If you look at different cities, there are some different things they're doing for utilities, providing some relief for people. If you look at different landlords, they are doing some things to provide relief. And so that might be helpful. And again, it's probably case by case. I can't say it's all across the city of Dallas, all across any of the cities.
Yeah.
That is case by case basis. And then when we're looking at deferring payments, it's going to be case by case as well. It just depends on that company and what they've put in place. But I can tell you, based on all the work that we've done with companies, everybody's looking to find ways to provide relief. No one's trying to make it difficult on people, but this is unprecedented times, meaning it's something that we've never experienced before. And so all of the companies are adjusting at the same time as everybody that's missing a paycheck. And so it's a pretty interesting situation. If you have to defer payments, look into it for sure. But I would encourage you, first and foremost, really look at the reality of your situation and make sure you're not going to get yourself into too deep of a hole. If it looks like having to start from square one rather than getting into a hole at the end of this, I would rather you start at square one than be in a deep, deep hole that you have to dig yourself out of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, square one is much further along in squares than negative 2000, right? I
Yep,
mean,
exactly.
that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, and so it's really about minimization here, and then trying to work with the folks that we owe this money to. And we've talked a lot on this show already about reaching out to your landlord, and like you're saying, it's really not in anybody's interest to be trying to switch tenants out and to be overly aggressive, because everybody knows what's going on. Although, unfortunately, some landlords are, and I will remind everybody that we did recently have Mark Melton on, and there are 60 lawyers that have come together in Dallas to help people if they are undergoing eviction issues, and I think it's DallasEvictions2020.com if anybody needs that. I want to pivot a little bit to a sub-segment of folks in this business. There's folks that work in hotels, and some folks that are in management, and some folks that work for really cool restaurants that are sitting on IRAs, perhaps. They're sitting on 401ks. There's some investment products sort of floating around in the world. And if you watch the news, or at least CNBC or something like that, you've probably noticed the markets are not doing so hot right now. So there's a big pile of money. Maybe it's not as big as it used to be, but there's some money there for some people. Is this a source of solution to this problem for some people? How should we be approaching these investment products if this looks like capital that's on the table for people?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I'd say talk to your financial professional. I don't want you to think that this is cookie cutter. Everybody's financial situation is different, and everybody's retirement accounts are going to be structured a little bit differently as far as their investments. And so talk to your financial professional, make sure that you're really getting the full picture of what happened to your investments. And then I would say traditional market theory does say you want to buy low and sell high. So I personally would not be getting out of the market right now. I personally am going to stay in it as long as I can because I want to buy low and sell high. Now, if I was in a position where I didn't have any money to be able to pay my rent or take care of the necessities that I have, I would say, okay, I might have to evaluate utilizing some of these
Mhm.
funds, but I will have to weigh the cost of that. It can have significant impacts on your retirement in the long term. So again, we really would never recommend that you take out of your retirement account. We don't want you to get into a hole. So again, going back to that analogy, don't get into a hole over the situation, but also keep in mind that that retirement account will grow much more significantly if you leave it in there over a long term instead of just taking it out all the time in the case of emergencies. Now, with all of that said, I do get people are in dire times. It's a situation where people might have to do that. There is some really cool stuff that's come out where they are waiving the tax penalties when you
Oh,
take out of
interesting.
your IRA or your 401k. So if you have a 401k with your employer, you do need to talk to them. There is some paperwork you can do for a hardship withdrawal that's all related to COVID. It does have to be related to COVID to get that tax penalty waived. And then same thing with your IRA. If that's something you need to do, you can do that. Make sure you talk to your financial professional again. You want to make sure you understand all your investments and all those things.
Okay, so traditionally it's not a very good idea, but it seems like there may be some select circumstances now where, because there are some tax deferments available, and to your point, there's some pretty serious penalties if you begin taking money out of your retirement too early, and it sounds like some of those could be waived for people now, so there may be some opportunity there.
Mhm. Yep.
And are we saying that this is potentially something people could look at if they're trying to avoid just totally going bankrupt, right?
Yeah, definitely. If that's the
Okay.
situation, if we're like on the line, yes. Again, though, talk to a financial professional. If bankruptcy is really on the table, you need to have way more people in your corner. If that's really what you're looking at,
Sure.
you want to make sure that it's in your best interest to do that first.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. So probably not. And to your point, that money isn't really worth as much as it was 3 weeks ago anyway. So
Yeah.
potentially, holding on to that might soften the blow for you later on down the road if you can avoid taking that money now if at all possible. That makes a lot of
Yep.
sense. So
Now,
do
can I
you,
add real quick to
yeah,
that?
anything
For
you want.
those of you that may have lost your job and you're sitting on retirement money with an employer that you might not be returning back to. I don't know if people are planning to return to employers, trying to figure out what to do with those 401ks. You need to get with a financial professional. I'm happy to answer questions on that, but do not, don't just go ahead and take that money out of the 401k before talking to a financial professional. You don't want to just take that money and go spend it right now. If you do have money in a 401k that you're not planning to go back to work for them, there are some options for you to roll that money over. There are some options for you to kind of look at it. Talk to a financial professional again on that one.
Yeah, so could just traditionally you could roll a 401k maybe into an IRA or into another
Yep.
401k potentially, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And if, sometimes you'll actually get a physical check cut from this company, and if you did go and cash that, you would be liable for taxes because you wouldn't have applied for the deferment and all of these things potentially to avoid that, right?
Correct.
So if you're
Correct.
standing there with a big check in your hand and you just got fired and probably looks like some money that you need right now, it still
Yeah.
might be better just to put it back in the bank and forget about it, right?
Yeah.
Or rather in an
So
investment in this case, yeah.
put it into investment. Don't put it into the bank. Talk to a financial professional. Get an IRA set up, or talk to them about whether or not you need to leave it where it is, and then wait for the next time that you're employed, and you can roll it into your future 401k. But again, definitely case by case. You need to make sure that you've got someone who can explain the investments and the cost to invest in all those different things to you, and the consequences if you were to just put it right into your bank, or
Hmm.
if you were to roll it into another investment.
Interesting, interesting. And so folks that sort of, got laid off from their job, had existing investment accounts with those companies but are planning to go back, there's nothing they need to do at this time necessarily, or that's going to be
Yeah, no,
kind of
I
case
would
by
not
case.
say don't move your stuff. If you're planning to go back, leave it there. There is something called a vesting schedule. And so that vesting schedule, if your employer was kind enough to match any of your contributions, you want to make sure that you've met the vesting schedule before you made any moves. And if you are going to go back there, it is in your best interest typically. Again, this all does depend on the investments that you're in and the cost to invest. It typically makes the most sense to have your money together so that it's growing together. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. I want to get
Okay.
a little bit more general if we can. And we were talking earlier, and we wanted to discuss kind of what you had found to be sort of the top three missed opportunities for folks in the restaurant business, because maybe unlike a lot of financial advisors, you actually work with folks in our business, which is so flattering. Thank you for doing that. And I think a lot of us are curious here what your advice would be for people in this business, just a little bit more generally speaking, because I think a lot of people are taking this moment to reflect and think, well, I'm here where I am now. And what happens is going to happen. But once we get back in this system, I want to make sure this doesn't happen again. I want to be more prepared next time. And I'm part of that group too. So, if you could preach a little bit on that, that'd be super useful for everybody here.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. First, I'm honored that I get to work with anybody in the restaurant industry. I have a ton of fun doing it. You guys are great clients for me, so I enjoy it. It's great. You are right, though. I do work with a couple different people in the restaurant industry, so I get to see some of the common missed opportunities that might be happening financially. And so there are a couple that I'd love to mention, and I'd hope that you guys would learn from this and kind of change the way that you're looking at your finances a little bit. The first one, I would say a lot of short-term financial moves. So what I've really noticed is that there isn't very much of a long-term financial plan for a lot of restaurant employees. So they're not thinking about the future. They don't even realize that retirement is a reality. They might not even have financial goals to maybe buy a house one day or save up for the vacation that they want or whatever it is, plan for a family. That really isn't on the forefront of your mind sometimes. And so I see a lot of short-term spending happening, whether that be in extracurricular activities, going out, drinking, whatever it
I like
is.
the way you put that. Yeah.
Not just to throw anybody under the bus, but I do see it a lot. I would say I have seen before, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate with this, but taking a whole night's worth of tips and spending it in that next night and not saving it. And so there is a little bit of a misconception of money when you work in the restaurant industry because it comes by so quickly. You can make a ton of money in one night. And if you spend it, no problem. You can make some more the next night. And so there's just a misunderstanding of money and the value of it and what it really can afford you. And so one of the things that I would say, a lot of short-term spending, would love for, I have a lot of clients in the restaurant industry. I'm excited for their futures. I want them to have a future. I want them to have the beautiful financial plan with the emergency fund and the retirement. And so I want that for my clients, and I want that for anybody else that's in the restaurant industry because I really do believe there is a future for you, and hopefully we can plan for it. If we plan for it, you'll have tons of opportunities. You don't have to give up all of the fun things that you do. You just have to change the way that you do it so that you can have those opportunities in the future. So that's number one, short-term spending. The second thing that I see is a lot of apps. So a lot of phone apps for your savings or your investing. I am not going to name the names. There are some names out there where I'm like, where did this come from? I don't know what this
Sure.
is, but a lot of phone apps. And I'm sure you relate. Have you seen a lot of that too?
Yeah, I have, and some of them come with very cool looking debit cards and seem very very bank like and very normal. I guess like it's become mainstream in a way that it never has before. Maybe in the last couple years, right?
Yep. And I would say that it might not be the safest place for your money. And again, it kind of goes back to that short term. A lot of apps are, you're using them for short term financial choices and short term financial gain, whatever it is. And so it doesn't really, it's not tied to a financial plan. It's not tied to your future. And so a lot of that money goes right into the app and then comes right back out. And so I wouldn't point anybody towards an app. Instead, I'd point you to a financial professional and say, hey, let's actually get a plan going here because those apps can be a little misleading. I do applaud my clients that have tried the apps and have ventured into that because it means that they're serious about making financial moves and they want to do something. They want to save money. Most of them get the app because they realize they have a hard time saving money, but there are different ways you can do it. And I would encourage you to look at the different ways. So I would say, let's get rid of the applications for all of our saving and our investing. Let's look at more long-term plans. Let's talk to a financial professional to find out what might be better suited for you. So that's number two. And then number three, I see a lot of restaurant employees disqualifying themselves from
Hmm.
being an eligible client for a financial professional like myself. I personally, I don't care what you make. I just care that you want to be a responsible client and that you want to make progress towards your financial future. And so a lot of people just disqualify themselves as potential clients. And it makes me sad because there's such a missed opportunity for them. You can start retiring with as little as $50 a month. It's not like we're talking about tons of money that you're putting into these investments. It's not like we're talking about tons of money that you're putting into a plan. And I want people to be able to retire one day. And so start the conversation with someone. Don't count yourself out. Don't think that you don't have enough, and don't think that don't treat yourself like you're not serious. You are definitely a serious client to a financial professional. I hope that if any of you guys watching decide to meet with someone after this, that you would take yourself seriously, that you would walk into that office with confidence and be willing to start building something for your future, because you're a person. You're a legitimate person that has a legitimate future, and we can help you plan for that as long as you're willing to be responsible with those things. So I would say don't count yourself out. I'd be happy to work with anybody on here. I'd be happy to work with any restaurant employee. I think it's so fun. And I think that there's a lot that we can do for your future.
And so when you say folks disqualify themselves, are you saying that, you know, they're personally discounting like their own ability here?
Either they're personally discounting their own ability, or maybe they're just disqualifying themselves from planning for their future. Like they don't even think that it's something that they need to do, or that a financial professional will be willing to do with them. Maybe they don't even know that it's an option. And so really, I think it's more so a mindset of, I don't even know that it's available to me. And it is, it totally is.
Yeah, because this is something that's available to everybody. I mean, you certainly work with all sorts of different people, right? And anybody could give you a call and ask for advice, and that would be totally kosher. So, you know, is there a, you know, I think people probably also disqualify themselves of just thinking they don't make enough money. And you're talking about being able to start this at $50. I mean, is it reasonable for an average server, an average cook, you know, to really start thinking that far out in the future?
Yeah, it's more than reasonable. I have plenty of servers and cooks and people that actually are doing financial planning with me already. And so I can tell you from firsthand experience that it's more than reasonable. It's possible. It can be done. And I hope that it continues to happen for people because it's helping them for sure. One of my favorite conversations is sitting down with someone that I met with a server probably 3 years ago. We met, talked about it. He was not interested. He was like, I don't want to do retirement planning. I don't need to. And then I just kept asking. I kept pursuing him and saying, hey, bro, I really care about you. I want to see you retire one day. Let's do this. And so he said, let's try it. And he started with a small amount. And by the end of the year, he was so surprised that he had any money saved that the next year he wanted to increase what he was contributing by a significant amount. And then the next year he came to me and said, hey, I actually am thinking about my future. I want to buy a house one day. Can you help me save for that? And then the next year he comes to me, hey, I want to help my mom plan for her financial future. Can you help me with that? And so it kind of just unlocked this door to all of these different possibilities and options and things that he really cared about, but just didn't know that there was a resource available to him to help him with it. And so it was pretty cool to be a part of that. I'm really excited for his financial future. I hope that this doesn't impact him too much because I really do want to see him make some progress. But does that answer your question? I hope it does.
Very well, yeah, and I think that, you know, I think that what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. You know, people definitely can surprise themselves by what they're capable of at the level that they think that they're on. You know, I mean, one of the misconceptions of this business is that it's entry level work, or that it's low skill, or, you know, in some cases that it's low paid. Because the reality is there's a lot of people that lost an awful lot of money when they lost their jobs. You know, the income in some parts of this industry is real. And I think that if we're talking specifically about servers, bartenders, managers, perhaps that are making, you know, over $40,000, $50,000 a year, and in a lot of cases, then it's probably a little bit more obvious where these things could come from, you know, living within your means, these things that I'm sure we'll continue to talk about here in this conversation. But do you have any specific advice for folks that are making, you know, hourly wage workers that aren't tipped, that are often going to be making somewhere, you know, $10, $12 an hour or something? You know, is there a, you know, should they be thinking about saving that money? Should they be thinking about trying to grow the income? Is there a tactic that you could share for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, again, case by case basis. It really depends on what your financial situation looks like. If you're married, again, you're going to have a dual income, so it might look different. And maybe your spouse doesn't work and you guys have children, so that financial situation is going to look different. Maybe you live with family and that helps you kind of with the bills. And so, again, case by case situation for sure. I would say both, though, to answer your question. Should you be saving or should you be growing your money? Both. It really depends on what your financial plan looks like. If there's a debt situation in there, that's going to matter too. But and this is kind of my phrase for the night, but get with a financial professional and have them help you with that because there are some options out there for you.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you are planning appropriately. It really matters as far as what do your bills really look like. So get a budget put together, get a whole sheet put down with all of your expenses on there so that you can have an idea of how much you really need to have saved. And then from there, you can kind of start talking about how much can I really invest and what do I need to invest for? If I've got children, do I need to plan for their college? If I've got retirement on the horizon, do I need to plan for that and things like that? And so I would say get with a financial professional, get all the things on paper, get all of your bills and expenses on paper, and then find out how much you need to have saved, and then find out how much you need to start saving for retirement, and find out how much you need to start saving for other investments like college and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you sent us a link, I think, with sort of a basic budget kind of thing. And I'm going to ask them to drop that in the comments for everybody if people want to check that out, because it really breaks it down into something really simple, and this is actually the math side of it isn't necessarily all that complicated. But I think that just sitting down and doing it can really take it out of you sometimes. It's just this idea of having all the numbers in front of you. But like you keep saying, everybody in this business tends to be sort of a unique snowflake of a situation. Everybody works in different restaurants, and some people have insurance and some people don't, and some people have investment accounts and some people don't, and some people are hourly and some people make a lot of tips, and who knows, right? And so It's very hard to prescribe a one-size-fits-all thing, but the first step for everybody is just to get a handle on what's happening, right?
Exactly. You got to have a picture of what's happening, and then you can start to paint stuff in. You did mention the budget sheet that I sent over to you guys. That's really a framework. So anybody who's watching, if you print it off, treat that like a framework. It's not going to give you an identical picture of what you do on a monthly basis, because the reality is if you're not budgeting right now, you might be missing a lot of the spending that you're doing. And so if you take that and you look at it and it gives you this picture that you feel like should be accurate but isn't accurate, then you need to start pulling your bank statements and going through and tracking those expenses, finding out where your money really is going. Most of our financial behavior is patterned, and it's mostly based on doing the same thing over and over again. So for me, that looks like buying a lot of coffee. I love to go buy coffee. And so
What kind
it's
of
a
coffee
problem.
do you like? Let's sidebar here for a second.
I love all coffee that's good and
You
quality
mean
coffee.
like going and buying a cup of coffee, like a cup of Starbucks or something?
Starbucks is not good, so
Oh,
I'm not
man.
even
See,
going to
we
comment
can be
on
friends
that.
now. This is perfect.
Starbucks is here. I love good quality coffee, so I'll
Oh,
go to
good. Okay.
Cultivar or I'll go to Houndstooth or those kinds of places. But yeah, sometimes it can get a little pricey when you're buying 2 or 3 cups a day. So definitely being
Yeah.
aware of those things as far as budget is. But yeah, I do love some good coffee.
Yeah, me too. Houndstooth is my favorite. But a Houndstooth Cortado, to be fair, is like $3.50, and then you tip and maybe get a cookie or something that's like $7. And that's an awful lot of money, when a lot of people are making half of, maybe double that an hour sometimes, right? And, those things really do add up. I remember the last time in my life I was spending an exorbitant amount on coffee was we were opening a restaurant in Deep Ellum, and I was drinking coffee just from morning to night. And it, some days you're spending $20 on coffee, which probably in that moment doesn't seem like a lot of money, right? But like you're saying, patterns of people usually stick, right? So in your experience, when you're looking through bank statements, I mean, it's not usually one bad month that throws somebody off, right? This is sort of a longer term.
Yes, definitely. And I would even say, though, real quick, just to backtrack, because I'm sure we have some people on here that maybe work in the coffee industry.
Oh no,
Anybody
everybody go
that
drink coffee. I'm sorry.
we won't stop. I'm definitely addicted, so don't worry. That's not a concern here. But I would say to that point, so say real quick, I'm going to sidebar. If there is something that you really enjoy, for me, it's coffee. For someone else, it might be something else. That can be part of your budget. I'm willing to go spend $20 a week on coffee or $20 a day on coffee, whatever it is. I'm not going to tell you how much I spend on coffee because it can be crazy, but I'm willing to spend it, but it's in my budget. So it's part of that. And it's something that I can afford This season, it's a little bit tough for everybody, to be honest, and we're trying to be careful, but it is something that I can afford in most seasons. And so it is something that I'm willing to go spend money on because I really enjoy it. But I'm also putting my money into savings. I'm putting my money into investments. I'm putting my money towards my mortgage and all of those things. And so I've got my expenses categorized. So it's not just me stopping in at the coffee shop just because I wanted to and just because I
Mhm.
had some money in my pocket. It's because I had it planned in my budget. And so I would say for anybody who's on here that's a coffee shop owner, we're not going to stop buying your coffee. We're just going to buy it in a different way. We're going to plan for it appropriately. And that's what I would encourage to you guys when you're looking at your budget. Make sure that you are thinking about the things that you care about. A budget should never be something that takes out everything that you enjoy. It should be something that allows you to enjoy those things in the appropriate amount. And when we do that, I think they become more enjoyable. And then it allows you in the future, when you retire, to continue enjoying them. If you
Mhm.
only enjoy those things now, if you only spend your money on going out and eating out, and you have those $200 dinners a couple times a week, when you get to retirement, you're going to have no money there. You're going to be eating on food stamps and you're going to be barely able to provide for yourself and it's going to be really difficult and I don't want that for you and I'm sure you don't want that for yourself. So if you can learn to budget and appropriately spend money now, it will allow you to spend money in the future so that you can keep those things that you enjoy in your future and in your budget right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, good coffee could be a lifetime addiction if you play the cards
Yes.
correctly. What is your opinion on avocado toast?
Oh, I'm a big fan of avocado toast. I'm from California, so it's a staple there.
Right on. See, financial advisor, there's nothing wrong with avocado toast. Case closed. Um, Talk a lot about short-term spending, long-term planning, these things. How do we avoid spending too much short-term? Is there a thought process that goes into that, other than just saying, "Oh, like I'm going to try to save my money this month"?
Yeah, no, that's great. I will give you guys a really great analogy. So, when we look at all of our budgeting and we create a plan, I want you to think about like a boat. If you're getting into a boat going onto the water, if you're getting into a boat and there's a giant hole in it, you're not going to get into the boat. So, if you know that there's a giant expense that you have in your life and it's going to sink you, you're not going to get into it. You're going to say, okay, maybe not. So it's not really the big things that we spend our money on that kill us, it's the small things. And so if you look at your, again, finances like a boat, you might get into a boat with a bunch of small holes. And those small holes can add up to be one big hole and they can ultimately end up sinking you. And so those small holes can look like all of the different little expenses that we don't plan for, the extra drink that you didn't plan for, the extra appetizer, whatever that you didn't plan for. And so the best way to do it is to budget and to really get an idea of what you're doing spending wise. What I do personally is I do track my expenses. So I go back and I pull my bank statements. Again, coffee's a problem. So I want to make sure that I'm not overdoing it. I didn't go to too many coffee shops in the week or the month. And so I'll go through and I'll categorize it and I'll notice if I frequented somewhere too much and I'll notice that might become a hole. So I want to be careful not to bring it into the next month. I want to make sure that I'm really careful with those things. And so I would encourage anybody who doesn't feel like they have a handle on it. Number one, I would say simplify your spending, simplify your life. But number two, go back and see, hey, where am I spending money? Where do I need a limit? Maybe you even need a limit where you go. Like if you notice that you're going to the same place, the same restaurant 6 times out of the week, and every single time it's a huge chunk of money for you, maybe limit it to 4 times, 3 times. Just a little bit of a change will have a huge difference for you. One of the things, again, I've worked with a lot of restaurant employees, and so one of the things I do recommend you guys really enjoy your industry, which I love so much. You work in it and then you play in it, which is so fun. But oftentimes it takes a lot of your money. So you make all your money from it, but then you give it all back. And so it's like
Mhm.
this revolving economy in there. One of the things I do recommend is to evaluate how much money you are spending when you go out to the restaurant industry, when you go out to different things. And if you're finding that you're buying 6 drinks while you're out, that might be too many. It's going to cost you a lot. It costs a lot to buy a drink when you're out versus going to the store and buying something, having something at home, Ubering, and then buying less drinks while you're there. Same thing with if you're getting appetizers and entrees and dessert,
Mhm.
all of the
Mhm.
things. maybe don't get the appetizer, entree, and dessert. Maybe just get the entree, or maybe get the appetizer and the entree and leave out the dessert, whatever it is. But try and limit the things that you're buying when you go out. I find that's a really big problem for some people. So if you can limit that, and if you can do some of the things at home and then still go enjoy yourself out, it typically is less expensive when you do it at home. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Pre-gaming is cool again. I mean, that
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. 'Tis the season. And honestly, a lot of people are stuck at home, having to cook at home for the first time, perhaps, having to drink at home for the first time, perhaps. And I think that, this is the exact right time to be having this conversation, because we're talking about things that people could start doing right now, potentially. I mean, obviously, we all want to rush back into this business and reboot it as hard as we can, but to your point, it's inappropriate for the folks in the restaurant business who are really suffering right now to be the ones with the burden of rebooting it. That's not on us, It's kind of on everybody else, and we need to make sure that we're there to show up for work every day, and are financially stable and secure. So no, I think that's a great explanation. I wanted to ask you about a term that I hear a lot of financial advisors use, which is to pay yourself first. Could you talk about what that means?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we look at budgeting and when we look at financial planning, we actually like to say, look at yourself like a business. So if you were a business and you're the business owner, you're going to take a portion of that profit from the company and you're going to pay yourself. That's how you get paid if you're a business. And so pay yourself first. Make sure that that happens. A lot of people make the mistake of saying, oh, I'll save at the end. Don't worry, I'm going to save. And then they get to the end and they're like, oh, I just didn't have enough to save that month. That's such a lie. You always have enough to save. You're just doing it wrong. You're doing it at the wrong time. You got to do it right off the top. So as soon as you get paid, pay yourself first. If you're just starting out and you don't necessarily have huge goals yet, we can start with that 10% rule. Pay yourself 10% of what you make. So if you make $3,000, that's $300 immediately to savings. And then again, upwards from there, 400 if it's 4,000 and so on. So make sure that you are taking a chunk and you're putting it right into savings. Now, this concept, definitely always apply it to your finances. If you are in a situation where you're getting out of debt, you want to get a debt strategy together. And at some point, you might notice that your savings is building and your debt is growing at the same time. You don't want your debt to be cutting into your ability to plan for the future. And so get with a financial professional, but also make sure that you've got a plan for your debt. We want to make sure you have savings in place so that you don't get into debt again if there's an emergency. So have a little bit in savings. $1,000 would be the minimum, maybe go upwards to $2,000 if you need to, but have $1,000 in savings, and then all of that extra surplus that you might be finding, start putting it towards that debt. There's some great debt tools out there. I have a couple tools that I use with clients. So if anybody on here is like, I want help, I need to get through debt, reach out to me. I can send you the tool and you can go through it. It doesn't cost anything for that tool. I can happily send it out to you. So reach out to me. I'd be happy to do that. But you can put all of your debt in there and get a plan with it. And that kind of helps a little bit when it comes to deciding, do I pay off debt or do I save? What do I do here? You do need to make sure you're still saving, because we don't want you to get into an emergency situation and just end up back in debt. But we do want to make sure you have a plan for the debt. And then, of course, continue to save regardless what the situation is. Always make sure that you're saving first. Hope to answer your question. I kind of went on a tangent there.
No, you nailed it. You keep knocking them out of the park here. This is perfect. So you keep mentioning to everybody to go see a financial professional. So I have to ask the obvious question. Is that an expensive endeavor?
No, not always. So to answer your question, it really depends on the financial professional. There's a couple different ways that financial professionals get paid. I don't charge a fee for conversations. So if we're going to sit down and we're going to just create a plan, there's no cost to it. There's no cost to really our services. If you need a financial product, then there's going to be costs associated with that. So if you buy into an investment, there's costs associated with that. Sure. If you buy into other financial products, there's costs associated to that. But it's not really you paying the financial advisor, it's you buying that product. Now, there are financial advisors that have the appropriate licensing and choose to charge by the hour. There are some people who have certified financial it's CFP, their certified financial planner license. They can charge in a very different way. They can literally charge you by month. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that financial planners get paid. You want to make sure that you trust that person and that it works for you, but it really doesn't have to be crazy expensive to meet with one. You can meet, like I said, you can meet with me for free. So it's not like it has to cost you a ton of money. A lot of times there is a need for a different product. So there is that benefit of working with people, but we're here to help people regardless.
Well, that sounds like one hell of a deal. I'll just mention now then, before we got started, Chantelle said that if anybody wanted to talk to her, all you have to do is just type her name into Facebook and you will find her smiling face and she will respond to you. So her name is right there on the screen, and just you're already on Facebook. Just type it in, be her friend, and she's cool. She likes good coffee and has good advice. So seems like the way to go so far. So it looks like, you know, what you're saying is that if we take somewhere around 10% off the top every month and sort of pay ourselves first, and then we take care of our either, you know, our mortgage or our rent, and then utilities and these things, and groceries, right? And then we're going to have some savings generated from that. When do we need to start thinking about investment versus savings?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we do have kind of a rule of thumb of how much we want you saved in a regular emergency fund savings account. So I'll give you kind of those different markers so that anybody on here, if you want to write them down, you've got them, you've got some goals in place. The first marker that we would consider would be 3 months of your expenses. So say your expenses are $3,000 a month, that looks like $9,000 in savings. And then the next marker would be 3 times your monthly income. So if your monthly income is $5,000, it looks like $15,000 in savings. And then from there, we're going to move on to 6 times your expenses and then 6 times your monthly income. So those would be the markers as far as savings is concerned. But once you've reached an appropriate amount in your savings, again, I would probably say it would be that 3 months of expenses would be the minimum there. Then definitely start investing. We don't necessarily want you to miss out on the opportunity to invest. You're going to get out of investing what you put into it. And that goes for both money and time. So if you wait until you're 50 years old to start saving for your future, you've missed out on a lot of time, and that can significantly hurt you. And if you choose to only put a small amount in while you're young, that can also kind of hurt you, but it's better. You've got 2 choices. Are you going to take advantage of time, or are you going to take advantage of putting a lot of money in there? Hopefully you can take advantage of both, but if you only can choose one of them, I would say make sure you get in there as quickly as you can. Of course, get with a financial professional, make sure that it's appropriate for your plan, and of course, make sure that it's appropriate for how much you've got saved. Minimum would be 3 times your monthly expenses. And then start taking advantage of putting some more in there as you go. But make sure that you are looking at the time and the amount that you can save. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about investments, I think that most people probably sort of blank out when we start talking about that. I don't think a lot of people have a lot of investments in this business, and so, you know, are we saying jump into the stock market? Are we saying go buy a classic car? I mean, you know, can you sort of define a little bit what we're even referring to?
Yeah, for sure. When we're talking about investing for your future, we're talking about getting into something that will appreciate in value, not depreciate. And jumping into a car would probably be something that could
What
potentially
about a cool
depreciate in
motorcycle
value.
or like a speedboat?
You know, those are really great things that I would say you can invest in when you have the money outside of your retirement investments. Those aren't retirement investments; those are fun investments. So you got to see the difference between retirement investments and fun investments. If you have maxed out your retirement investments and you are ready to go do some fun investments, go for it. I have no problem with that, but I would ask you to consider, what am I doing retirement wise? Am I doing something that's going to serve me long term and not just something short term and fun? Remember, we're trying to move away from that short term mindset to a long term mindset. And I know that it's a challenge for a lot of people, especially if you're in the restaurant industry. Again, you guys look at money from a really short-term perspective, and that's okay. It's just part of the way that you do your finances because of the way that you experience money. It comes in one day and it leaves your hand the next day sometimes. And so we're really trying to move from short-term choices to long-term choices. And the best way to do that would be to get with a financial professional, to be honest. It really is the best way. They can help you create a plan that will get you there. But I would say move some of your focus to the long-term things, move some of your focus to your future, and don't try and just invest in the fun things that will get you excited right now. Invest in the things that will take you all the way until you're in your 60s, 70s, maybe even 80s.
Yeah, and so if your company doesn't offer some sort of investment program, you know, are we talking about things like Roth IRAs, right? I mean, stuff
Yeah.
along those lines are kind of a typical thing that
Yes.
people should be looking at.
Exactly, and anybody can open those. So I would really encourage people to look at opening those, and it really does depend on the amount that you make, which one I'd recommend. So I'm not going to make a recommendation on
Sure, sure.
this, but yes, you can definitely open one of those, and that's where we would encourage you to put retirement money outside of your employer if you're looking for something outside of that.
Well, so again, to your point, I mean, there's all sorts of weird acronyms and confusing things going on in here. And a lot of people, like you said, are using things like apps and such to help them kind of manage their money. And when there's an option to talk to somebody like you who actually is able to create something for somebody that's really individualized, it's starting to make more and more sense as we continue to talk here. Yeah. I want to ask you another question with something that you mentioned before we got on the air about health insurance. And I know neither of us are experts on this exactly, but I did want to talk a little bit about this. And 80% of bartenders nationwide do not have health insurance through their employer, which is everyone basically, right? And I think that probably is fairly similar for cooks and bartenders and such. And in fact, a lot of the people that did have insurance lost it. I'm among one of those. I had insurance through my wife. She was in the hotel business. They let her go. There's no insurance anymore. Are there short-term options for people that are making sense?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I do know a good chunk about health insurance. We do group health insurance, but on the individual side, we can do it. We don't try and get too involved in that. A huge part of what's happened right now with the health insurance, kind of the area where there are some questions and there's some changes there, they're allowing a lot of opportunity with health insurance right now. So if you are not employed and you don't have a health insurance plan, you can get into the marketplace and you can get on a plan. If COVID wasn't a thing, that would not be allowed right now. You do have to have a qualifying event to be eligible to get onto a health insurance plan, or you have to be eligible at your employer to get onto a health insurance plan. But in the event of COVID, they're opening up the marketplace. So if you don't have a job right now and you want to get into the marketplace and you want to get a plan, go out there and get one. Go get one that's a high deductible if you're looking for really low premiums. But try and get yourself covered. It's something that we would encourage. And then if you do have an employer and you're with your employer still, most health insurance companies, and again, I say most because I haven't necessarily talked to all of them. I've just talked to a handful of them, and I've heard a lot from other advisors that do group health insurance. They are allowing you to get onto the plan even if you weren't eligible. So meaning if you didn't have enough hours to be eligible for the plan, they're allowing people to get on the plan. So go talk to your employer if that's something that you're really concerned about. You should be allowed to get onto the plan if you want to. And then for anybody like in your situation, if you did lose your health insurance coverage, you should be getting COBRA letters in the mail. Mm-hmm. So look out for those COBRA letters. If you're not familiar with COBRA is, it allows you to keep your employer-sponsored plan outside of employment. You will have to pay 100% of the premiums, but just so you know, it is an option and it's available to you. So make sure you look for that COBRA letter. It should be coming over the next couple of weeks to months. It sometimes can take some time to get those out to people, but those are also an opportunity for you to get on the plan too.
So when you look at health insurance in general, is this something that you're thinking of as more of something to protect your health or to protect your finances?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's both. I mean, the reality is if you're not here, then what does it matter if you have a financial plan? We want to make sure we want to make sure that you're still alive and that you're taken care of. But I have, again, I've been involved in the restaurant industry, and I've had some restaurant employees that have had some serious health things happen that just were out of the blue, unexpected, and it would have killed them financially. And so we definitely want to make sure that you got something in place. Medical bills can be extensive if you don't have something in place. And so I would encourage you to get on a plan. Again, high deductible plan. If you can't afford something right now that's really expensive, definitely get on something that you can afford. Now, with the COVID stuff, you and I both did talk about this. There is the act that came out that did say all COVID-related medical expenses are going to be waived. But I would encourage people, be careful. You want to make sure that you do have the appropriate things in place. So if you do end up in the hospital and it's not COVID related and you thought it was, I would hope that you'd have something in place that would cover you. Going to a hospital can be very expensive. You want to go to an urgent care first. Try to go do teledoc first so that you can kind of cut back on expenses with that stuff. But it can shock you if you go straight to a hospital and you get flooded with all these bills afterwards. So I hope that answered your question. I don't know if it did, but we want to make sure that you're alive. So take care of your health first. And then after that point, yes, as far as the medical bills, we do want to make sure that we limit them to the best of our ability if we have to.
Yeah, and I would caution everybody listening that the government is changing things very, very quickly. And we
Yes.
don't, we're not entirely sure exactly how everything's going to get paid for, or where all the money's going to go yet. And, to your point, protecting yourself is probably the best step here because, traditionally in our business, it's not like we have a lot of people looking out for our financial futures. Most people's bosses don't really care about their retirement, and they certainly don't care about their health care, and then their mortgage gets paid. Because we're fairly low paid people that don't really have a lot of those benefits, and so if you are able to protect yourself in this situation, that would probably be a good thing to do. I wanted to ask you about sort of the other side of COVID, sort of coming out of the other end of this, and hopefully there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We're looking at coming to peak COVID-19 here over the next couple of weeks, hopefully, and then ideally having something happen by the end of the summer where we can kind of get up and running again. And I imagine that a lot of jobs are going to come back and things are going to move very quickly. A lot of people are going to be really behind, and it's going to be a weird world. So I wanted to ask you a couple of things. One is like, when you're going from a period of having nothing and everything is just on fire and there's no money and we're relying on government assistance or whatever ends up happening to the 16 million people that'll definitely raise next week to 20 million at least, that all this advice still applies when you get back into the workforce?
Yep, definitely. I would say all this advice still applies. One of your questions on here earlier was really kind of like, what's the first thing that you would do? And I'd say set your eyes on savings. Get a plan in place to start saving. Hopefully, I would love for this experience to only be a wake-up call and not be something you have to dig yourself out of going forward. I really hope that it's just a wake-up call and it's just something that says, hey, gosh, I really want to be prepared if anything were to happen in the future. Now, if it is a situation where you're digging yourself out of it and you feel like you kind of drowned a little bit financially over the last couple of weeks, months until that point, and you need help getting out of that, talk to someone, get some help with a debt plan, make sure that you've got something in place. Make sure you face it. A lot of people, unfortunately, I've met with some clients who will just choose to ignore debt and choose to ignore kind of the bad things that have happened. And then it just grows and it builds and it really sets you up for a negative situation in the future. And it limits your ability to do a lot of things. So it's going to limit your ability to buy a house in the future. It's going to limit your ability to take care of your family, all those different things. And so I would say make sure you face it. Don't ignore it. I do believe that it's possible to get out of any financial situation. Even if it's 6 figures of debt, it's possible to get out of it. And so make sure that you're facing it. Make sure you've got a plan for it. But set your eyes on savings first. And then if it is a debt situation that you got to get out of, then get out of it. Get some help and get a plan in place.
I like it. So I have a broader, more challenging question, to be honest, which is sort of about the whole business. And one of the big problems that I see, along with the low pay and perhaps the lack of access to these types of conversations in the first place, and maybe this pre-existing knowledge in our market, there's not really a lot of movement or pressure on the employers or on society to make a change that would make some of the things that we're talking about easier, right? And it's 2020 and it still remains the case that a lot of people in this business work for small restaurants that are not offering them investment products, that are not offering them any kind of health insurance options, and aren't offering them, anything in the way of benefits. And of course, it's because they can't afford it, because we've sort of created this world. But, as somebody that's in the business that you're in, is there something that we could be doing as business owners to do better at that? Is there something that our industry could be doing to do better at that?
Yeah, that's a great question. But I do want to say too, real quick to that point, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. I do know quite a few restaurants that really care about their employees. So if any employee out there is like, oh, snaps, they don't care about me. No, a lot of them really do care about you. They're just trying to figure it out financially themselves too.
Yeah. Well, that's not what I mean, I guess. But
Just want to make sure that's not what's heard. Because I do know quite a few that are providing benefits or trying their best to do it. It can be a difficult thing to provide because it can cost money. But I do want to say that there are some options out there. It's not like you have to go set up a 401k. We go into businesses and we set up payroll deducted IRAs. So what that looks like is we go up to the employer and we say, this isn't going to cost you anything, but it's going to be a great benefit to your employees. Let's just talk to them about retirement and let's get something set up for them that, again, it's not going to cost you anything as the employer, but it's going to be a great benefit to your employees. And so for any business owners that are watching, get with a financial professional, talk to them. We've got so many options out there. It is our goal to help people with their futures, and we'll do that in whatever way that we can. We'll give you the advice that we can. We'll give you the recommendations that we can to help you with that. If you're lost on health insurance and you don't know how it works, get with someone like myself. Get with someone who can really help you from a group perspective. How can you do this for your employees? Even just providing them with this opportunity to have FaceTime with a financial advisor. We've done this a couple times with some groups where we go out there and we provide lunch and we go talk to their employees and we give them the basics of financial planning, or we give them in-depth things that they need, something that might apply to them, whatever business it is. We'll go in and we'll help them with that stuff. And so give them some information. So again, if you're a business owner watching this and you're like, how do I do this in a way that's affordable? Use us, meaning the financial advisor pool that's out here in Dallas. There's tons of us. We're willing to help. We care about people. We care about helping them make progress for their future. And so help us help you. So come to us, ask us to do speakings, ask us to provide retirement options that won't cost you anything, ask us to provide advice on the different options that you have for health insurance and things like that, because there really are tons of options out there. And then if you're someone that's working in a restaurant, you're like, man, I have a great relationship with my employer and I think they'd want to offer something like this and they just don't know about it, then go talk to them. Say, hey, I think this would benefit us. Because I definitely know that I'm not the only one. There's tons of us out there that want to offer what we do. Honestly, most people who get into, there's two different types of financial advisors. There's the one that really, really wants to make a lot of money, so they're only going to work with the people that make a lot of money. And there's people like myself that really just care about people and want to make sure people have a future. And so we're happy to have the conversation. It's exciting. This is fun for me. So I would love to do that with any group out there.
Well, me too, Chantelle. This has actually been really fun. It's so funny, I find myself now sitting here talking to a financial advisor for the first time in my life, and not about my finances, although I might give you a call later. And we've been at this for about an hour now, which is usually where we try to. Yes, it is. Oh, it is Lagavulin. And I wanted to point out a couple things in the comments. One, Elias was here earlier and he commented on your shirt, which I think is so great. That the owner of that. And Elias is out there doing amazing work right now with Everybody Eats, giving away an unbelievable amount of food. And so while we're here talking about money, I just want to remind everybody out there that if you don't have money right now, and let's be honest, you don't, then take up these people who are giving away free food. Go get free food from people and feel good about it and give them a smile, and they want to see you. And if that displaces $20, then that's $20 that you didn't have to spend somewhere else right now. And the fact of the matter is that the restaurant industry has come together in a really unprecedented way to take care of ourselves and to look after our own. And I hope that, honestly, after conversations like this, Chantelle, I hope that it'll come together in a bigger way and start taking care of people in this way as well. So, hopefully this conversation is a part of that, and this is something that we can continue on in the future, because, honestly, this may be the first time I've ever talked about this stuff with people before, in public, talking about, well, what should the restaurant business really do? Before I let you go, I want to give you an opportunity to say anything else you'd like, and thank you so much for coming on tonight, because it really means a lot that we've been able to get folks like you who are so dedicated, that honestly, I don't think that most people watching had any idea that they could reach out to somebody like you. So this is really meaningful. So thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. I've had a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. And I hope people got something out of this. That's really the whole point of me coming on here. But I did want to say, circling back to the beginning, I didn't tell you who Modern Woodman is.
Oh,
so I'm going to tell you about
let's talk about that now.
And I'll tell you a little bit about what we've done over the last couple of weeks with COVID-19 and some of the relief that we provided. But Perfect. Modern Woodman is a fraternal financial advising firm. So huge mouthful, but an incredible company. So we've been around since 1883. We've been giving back to a lot of different communities all across the country. That fraternal piece allows us to give back a lot of money every year. And so last year we did about $45 million in impact nationwide. So we've been able to give to a lot of different communities.
Wow.
And then throughout this entire experience, our company, and really this is my opportunity to brag on Modern Woodmen. I'm super proud to be a part of this company at this point. I mean, honestly, going through this experience has just made me so proud to be a part of it. We genuinely care about people as a company. It's really who we are. So during this experience, we have provided relief to our clients and then to nonprofits. And so we've provided grocery assistance to clients, communities that our clients are involved in. So say a client's got a best friend that's not a client of ours, but is older and can't go get groceries, or is lost their job and needs help. We've been able to provide that. And so that's been great. Any of my clients are watching and you need help, please reach out. We really can help you with groceries. And then again, if you know people in your community that need help, let us know. We can help with groceries right now. And then we're also, if there's anybody like Everybody Eats is a great example. We were able to give a little bit to them for that. And so we're able to give back to those organizations and help provide for people in this time, which is pretty incredible. So Modern Woodman's a really special company, and it's an opportunity to brag on them because they're really great, especially during this time. And so I'm super thankful to work for them. But I'm really thankful I got this opportunity with you guys. I don't really have anything else to add outside of that, except for thank you for having me on here. Thank you for allowing me to talk about this awesome topic and allowing me to talk to so many different people. And I hope it was really helpful.
No, I think so too. And, I just want to remind everybody that when you close your eyes and you think of a financial advisor, it probably doesn't look anything like Chantelle, but now it does. And this is a friendly, smiley face. And it's not some guy in a suit that's judging you because of what's happening in your life. It's somebody that legitimately cares and wants to help. And that's a brave new world, I think, for a lot of people. So I can't thank you enough for coming on tonight. And I'll remind everybody that if you need Chantelle, you see her name, look her up and talk to her. She's very friendly. We just met and we had a killer conversation. So thank you so much for coming on. And I'm tired tonight, so this will be it. So thank you everybody for watching at home, and we'll catch you tomorrow.